Yeah, James, a lot of talk about Kalyn Ponga's future over the last few years. He's got 2 more years to run on his deal with the Newcastle Knights, but revelations now that he's engaged the services of a New Zealand rugby union agent to look at his options going forward. And as I said, 2 years to run, $1.4 million a season, still running on that deal with the Knights. But it's my understanding that Kalyn's willing to walk away from the Knights if the right deal came along. Now, there's a lot that has to transpire before then. None more important than the Knights agreeing to release him. That's obviously a key sticking point in all this. But Kalyn Ponga is making all indications that he wants to leave Newcastle, and as I said, as early as the end of this season.
So the talk and the expectation here is it's to go to rugby union. What about the NRL, another team?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's going to be very difficult at this time of the year if he does intend to leave the Newcastle Knights with... we're talking about November 1. Most clubs would have filled their rosters, or most of their rosters, and salary cap for next season. It'd be very difficult. Not saying impossible, but difficult. And also, having spoken to people at Newcastle today, why would they help another team? Like, they've shown previously that they're willing to entertain giving Kalyn Ponga an out to go to rugby. They previously gave him a get-out clause in his contract, the previous contract that he signed, and they were willing to give that option up. They took that out, though. They wanted a complete guarantee that Kalyn would be there till the end of 2027. But it hasn't gone well for Newcastle. It hasn't gone well for Kalyn. He's missed 46 games in the last 5 years if he doesn't play the rest of this year as expected. So that's a massive chunk of your salary cap, 12, 13% of your cap on a player who hasn't played a lot of football. So it could work both ways. And having spoken to people out of Newcastle today, perhaps it's something worth exploring if he does come. And as I said, he hasn't asked for an official release yet, but if he does, it's something the Knights have to consider.
And there's rugby union in his past too, right?
Yeah, he's played rugby union coming through. He's definitely made it clear that he wants to play for the All Blacks one day. We've got a World Cup in Australia in 2027. So if he's going to go and do that, there's a potential now to go and explore that opportunity. If he's, as I said, the agent that he's engaged is based in New Zealand. The other thing is there's big money in European rugby as well. Now, my understanding is it's not about money, this move for Kalyn. The ambition to leave Newcastle is not driven by money, because he wouldn't be leaving the contract as the highest paid player in the game to chase money. I think there's a belief that there's, he's in the prime of his career. He's 27 now, Kalyn. Like, if he's going to do something meaningful in his career, what he wanted that to be was a premiership with Newcastle. Maybe time is running out, and if he is going to do something special, he's got to move soon.
Cam, it's the chatter that has never gone away, that there's a potential of the Knights captain wanting to go to the 15-man code.
Yeah. Well, we just seen there, that was the vision of him in schoolboy rugby. Did really well. He was up at Churchy, I think, in Brisbane. So he's got history in that sport. I'm just wondering, so if that opportunity doesn't come up to move to rugby, then what? Where does that leave the Knights and Kalyn Ponga?
One of those untenable situations which we saw with, I guess, in the end, Lockie Galvin.
Would they be happy to release him to another NRL club?
Well, it's early days, Cam. Like, he hasn't gone to them for a release. I spoke to Newcastle today. They weren't even aware that he's engaged an agent in New Zealand to look at potential options.
Who's his agent in Australia?
His father looks after him most of the time. Andre Ponga, his father, has done the last couple of deals for him. So he used to have an agent years ago, Wade Rushton, but he moved for his father to do it all. So, look, as I said, anything is possible, but from my understanding, most teams would have their salary cap pretty much sorted for next year.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you start... If someone like Kalyn Ponga came on the market, I'm sure you can manoeuvre your roster to make it happen.
Well, you're shedding a couple of players, though, aren't you, for a $1.4 million salary?
Yeah, but Newcastle are in a situation where, this is why I said maybe they do. If Kalyn Ponga does knock on the door and says, look, I'd like to leave, you've got Dylan on $1.3 million on a 10-year deal. You've got Fletcher Sharp there who, you guys are the rugby league experts, potentially, he's done a good job in the halves, but he's a fullback. So does that give him the opportunity to play Fletcher Sharp at 1, you've got Dylan at 6, and then go in the market for a 7? And get some balance to the roster.
What does it mean for Dylan Brown? Because he's going up there on a reported 1.3 a year. Was there any clause there that Kalyn had to be in the team when he arrived?
No, nothing. Like, Dylan Brown's not walking away from that 10-year deal, is he? So there's going to be no issues for Dylan Brown in that situation. It's just a matter of what Kalyn wants next. And now that this is out there, what does Newcastle think of it all? And where does it transpire? I'd love to see him stay in the game. I think we haven't seen the best of Kalyn Ponga, even though he's won a Daily M, as silly as that sounds. He hasn't really fulfilled the potential most people thought they would, and that I guess you measure that on premierships and success.
What's Newcastle's attitude about the whole thing? Have you spoken to anyone from the club internally? Like, are they happy to let him go? You reckon?
I wouldn't say they're happy to let him go, Gal, but there's also a realisation that perhaps if this did pop up, well, then you have to ask the question: what's the best for the future of the Newcastle Knights? The balance of the roster, because if you're going to have Dylan and Kalyn there, both, Fletcher Sharp is not a half. Like, he's not a long-term half. He's a fullback. So do you want $2.7 million in your cap on 2 players? Like, it's a lot of money. Does this give them the flexibility? I haven't spoken to people there. There is a view that perhaps this is something they should explore if Kalyn comes knocking in the coming months.
Gus, I can't help but think about the Joseph Swaliti scenario too, and the temptation to go to rugby union that he did, and don't let the door hit you on your way out. How would you feel if Kalyn Ponga though moved to the 15-man code?
I think it's a huge loss for the game to have a superstar walk out on the game to go to rugby like that. And a huge loss for the Newcastle Knights. I mean, that's... I don't know what that says about the Knights at the moment. Kalyn's obviously thinking about his future if he's unhappy where he is at the moment and worrying that the best of his prime years are sort of wasting away with the team struggling. But from a games perspective, I think it would be really disappointing if we lost one of our game superstars. I mean, he was only a Dally M medalist a couple of years ago. So, the injuries and the money and managing salary caps and what have you, his own disappointment in how the team's going and how his form seems to be going. I suppose this might have been brought on by the recent injury and the fact that he's out for another extended period. So until you really talk to Kalyn, I don't think you'd know exactly what's going through his mind at the moment.
Geez, I'd love a penny for the thoughts of Dylan Brown, Cameron, in this situation too. Signs to go to the club and all of a sudden he's playing hooker and may not even be playing for the rest of the year, and then going to a club where the biggest name could be out the door.
Yeah, and, Michael just spoke about how, his current situation with Newcastle or the contract moving forward won't change with Kalyn not being there, but I'm sure he was a big reason why he wanted to move to Newcastle. One, the money, but two, you're playing with one of the best talents in the game in Kalyn Ponga.
I'm sure that would have been raised with Dylan when they were trying to sign him. No in the world.
Yeah. And they spoke, didn't they, Michael? I'm sure somewhere in the midst of it there was a Dylan Brown conversation that was had, at least somewhere along the way. In amongst all this, the earlier breaking story during the day from yourself was surrounding the coach, Adam O'Brien. It looks like the Knights were, before this broke already, planning to part ways with him come season's end. Yeah,
I said on this show about 6 or 8 weeks ago that there was a view that he wouldn't be sacked this year. He's got a 2-year payout. He's guaranteed his full payout. And the club was of the opinion there's no point sacking him now when you can wait till the end of the year, give him the chance to turn it around. Now, all indications are the Knights aren't going to finish in the top 8. They've lost Fletcher Sharp, they've lost Kalyn Ponga, and now they're going to lose Dylan Lucas. It's going to take an almighty effort for Adam O'Brien to resurrect this team and get them into finals football. The talk out of Newcastle is they're going to move in a different direction at the end of the year. Now, the mail I'm getting is that there is a very, very high opinion of Blake Green. He's the assistant coach there at the club at the moment. You talk about Dylan Brown, Brace. Well, he was the one who was speaking to Dylan Brown about how they're going to play at Newcastle when he comes over. He's the one who sold the vision of what the football will look like at Newcastle with Dylan Brown at the club. So I think the obvious question is why Blake Green is in the system at the moment. He's the attack coach. Well, I've spoken to people at Newcastle who say that he's very highly regarded. The players really love him. They think he's got all the attributes to be a great coach. They said sometimes the attack coach has to play the system or implement the plan that the coach wants him to. So you can't put the finger and blame on Blake Green for the way they're attacking. The other thing is he was in charge of their attack when Kalyn Ponga won the Dally M as well. So sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't. But the other name is Josh Hannay. A lot of people now lining up for Josh Hannay. Cam would know how, speak to how good of a coach Josh Hannay could be. He's been at the Sharks as an assistant at the moment, missed out to Jason Riles for that Parramatta job, and is, all reports, doing a great job with Queensland as an assistant coach there under Billy Slater as well. So I wonder if there are clubs who are umming and ahhing about making a move on their coach, whether or not they're worried about missing out on the next best coach. And more reports, if you're going after the next best assistant coach, then Josh Hannay's your guy.
What about Willie Peters? Willie Peters was at the Newcastle Knights, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's worked there.
So he's now overseas. Is he spoken about anywhere?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of talk around Willie Peters. He's doing a phenomenal job.
Going back to Newcastle? Or?
Newcastle, but also I've heard the Titans as well, Gal, whether or not he goes back there. But like I said, there are 3 clubs at the moment that people are thinking that there could be some changes. The Knights and Titans are definitely those 2, and there's a lot of talk around what happens with the Cowboys and underperforming under Toddy Payton.
Gus, in this sort of scenario, when you've got a couple of clubs that are starting to get that back end of the year and realise that change has to come in the coaching ranks, all of a sudden can there be a bit of a who blinks first if there's only a couple of real contenders on the market to pick from?
Yeah, well, whether or not this is true or not, I don't know. I mean, it just could be scuttlebutt or just speculation from the media about what clubs might be looking like because they haven't had a successful year or the year they would have wanted. There's always noise around these types of things. I really don't know what they'd be thinking. I really don't know if I was out looking for a coach at the moment who I'd look to try and employ. I thought all the coaches were fairly settled at the moment, to be honest.
Seemingly not it.
No, seemingly. No, look, at the end of the day, the way the competition was this year, like if you look a few weeks ago, there wasn't much between last place and fifth spot, really. And that's why a lot of clubs have just waited and sat back to see how their season pans out. It's now becoming obvious who are the teams that are going to break away into the 8. And I think with Adam O'Brien in this situation, if you look at Newcastle previously, when he first arrived at the club, there was a lot of conjecture as to the way it was handled with Nathan Brown, and that the fact that Nathan Brown got the shits of the fact that they had approached Adam O'Brien behind his back. And I think history may repeat itself. I think there's some feelers being put out about Josh Hannay. It's hard with Blake Green, he's in the club at the moment, but there are definitely some feelers being put out there about what they do next year. And like I said, it may not result in Adam O'Brien leaving, but at the moment the club's having internal discussions about looking in a different direction at the end of the year.